During family dinner with my parents, I got a text message from an unknown number. Get up and leave now. Don't say anything to your parents. I decided to listen and found out this. The next day, the police were knocking at their door. The weird part is how normal everything felt right before it happened. I wasn't expecting hugs or warmth or anything dramatic, but I also wasn't expecting what actually came, which in hindsight is probably the worst kind of setup. When things look normal, your guard drops, and that's when it gets you. It's the quiet before the storm, the calm surface of a deep, cold lake that hides monsters in its depths. The drive over had been a familiar ritual of self-reassurance. It'll be fine. It's just dinner. Maybe this time it will be different. The lie was so practiced, it almost felt true. I walked in and my mom was already calling out from the kitchen, her voice a little too bright, a little too saccharine. We're just about to serve. Come in. Come in. Like I was a treasured guest, late to something truly festive. My dad stood up from the table when I walked into the dining room, but it was half a second too slow. A slight hesitation, a micro-expression of uncertainty that flickered across his face before being smoothed over. It was the movement of a man not sure if we were hugging these days or just nodding. We nodded. Classic. It was the silent, agreed-upon distance we'd maintained for months. My sister was already seated, scrolling on her phone with the kind of casual indifference she'd perfected in her teens and weaponized in her 20s. She looked up just long enough to register my presence, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, then went back to whatever version of attention she was reserving for the glowing screen in her hand. That was fine. I hadn't come here to impress anyone. I had come because they had asked, and some deeply ingrained, foolish part of me still believed that showing up was the right thing to do. The table was set with the good china, the kind usually reserved for holidays. My chair was pulled out, an invitation. There was a tall, elegant glass already waiting for me, filled to the brim with a deep, ruby-red liquid, cranberry juice. Like always. It wasn't spiked with holiday cheer, not festive in the Pinterest sense, just juice, which I used to like before it became a symbol of their performative care. My mom smiled at me as she brought in a platter of roasted chicken, the skin a perfect, crispy gold. The smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the smile of someone playing a part in a game where we all pretended to be close. You still like cranberry, right? I nodded, my own throat suddenly feeling tight. I hadn't drunk it in months, but I wasn't about to start a conversation about that. Not now. Not when the air was already thick with unspoken things. Saturday they served. The food was standard Sunday dinner fare. Chicken, roasted potatoes, and some kind of green bean casserole my dad still claimed to like, even though everyone knew he scraped it to the side of his plate when he thought no one was looking. The conversation was painstakingly light. How's work? Still living in the same apartment? Traffic's been awful this week, hasn't it? I answered in short, polite sentences. I smiled. I even managed a small, hollow laugh when my sister, without looking up from her phone, mentioned a coworker who got stuck in the revolving doors at her office. Not because it was funny, but because I knew how to play this version of myself. The quiet one, the steady one, the one who didn't make things difficult. The one who paid her bills on time and didn't ask for anything. The designated adult. Somewhere in the middle of my dad's familiar rant about road construction, my phone buzzed in my lap. A soft, insistent vibration against my leg. I checked it under the table without thinking, a reflex. The message was short, stark, and utterly terrifying. No name, no punctuation, except for the brutal full stops at the end of each sentence, like someone typing with a shaking hand, trying too hard not to sound panicked. Get up and leave now. Don't say anything to your parents. I stared at it, the words seeming to lift off the screen. My blood ran cold. The room was still going on without me. My mom was nodding along to whatever my dad was saying about city planning. My sister was chewing her food with a rhythmic, detached motion. It was a perfectly normal, perfectly boring family dinner, and I was apparently supposed to flee from it like it was a crime scene. I didn't move, not at first. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. There were a dozen things it could have been. A prank from a friend with a sick sense of humor. A wrong number. A sophisticated scam. The start of some elaborate psychological experiment I hadn't consented to. But it wasn't any of those. I don't know how I knew. I just did. It was a primal, gut-level certainty that cut through the fog of denial. This was real. I'll be right back, I said, my voice sounding surprisingly steady as I pushed my chair back from the table. Just need the bathroom. No one questioned it. No one even looked up for more than a second. My perceived retreat was a non-event. I took my phone and walked upstairs, my legs feeling strangely disconnected from my body. I chose the upstairs bathroom because it had a heavy wooden door that closed all the way and locked without jamming, a small fortress of privacy in a house that offered none. And because if anyone was going to have a desperate whispered conversation in this house, it wasn't going to happen on the first floor where ears were always listening. I locked the door, the click of the bolt echoing in the sudden silence. I sat down heavily on the cold, unforgiving edge of the bathtub and stared at the message again, my thumb hovering over the number. Then I hit call. It rang once, then a voice, sharp and low. "You're still there?" "Who is this?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It's Mark." Mark, my sister's boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend. It was hard to keep up with their volatile cycle of breaking up and making up. "Mark, what the hell is going on?" His voice was a tight, strained whisper, like he was standing somewhere he wasn't supposed to be, hiding in a closet or a darkened room. "You need to leave, right now. Just get up. Walk out the front door. Don't drink anything. Just go." He paused, his breath catching. "Don't drink the juice." My mouth was desert dry. I hadn't touched the juice. Not yet. A vision of the deep red liquid in the tall glass flashed in my mind. "Why?" I demanded. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. "I can't. Just trust me, please. For your own good." "What is this?" I asked, my voice rising in pitch despite my efforts to control it. "Why are you even... What is going on?" He hesitated. A long, agonizing pause filled with the sound of his own ragged breathing. "Please, just get out of there. I'm begging you." "Not until you tell me why," I insisted, a stubborn resolve hardening within me. Then he told me, and I didn't respond. I sat there for a while after the call ended, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. Long enough to feel the chilling cold from the bathroom tiles seep through my clothes. Long enough to know I had a choice, and in the space of that one-sided conversation, I'd already made it. I remained seated, motionless, the phone slipping from my hand without me noticing. In my head, his last words echoed over and over like a distant sound, bouncing off the worn walls of memory. I didn't cry. I just let my thoughts drift like a quiet river, winding through what was lost, what remained, and the one thing I knew I could no longer avoid. I thought of her, of all the times I had to choose between silence and responsibility. We were 3 years apart, a gap that felt like a chasm. When we were kids, our parents gave us $5 a week in allowance. I saved mine in a porcelain pig. She didn't. A few days in, she'd have spent it all on sticky gum, glitter pens, or whatever else the elementary school black market was built on. And then she'd look at me with those wide, practiced eyes. That's when the grown-ups would step in. "She doesn't have any left. You still do," my mother would say, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "Don't be selfish." That's how it started. Not a rule written down, just a pattern etched into our family dynamic. If I saved, I was expected to share. If she overspent, I was expected to fix it. It was my first lesson in emotional and financial blackmail. In high school, I got a part-time job, just a couple of weekend shifts at a local pharmacy, stacking shelves and ringing up prescriptions. It was enough to buy my own jeans without an argument, to feel a sliver of independence. My sister didn't work. She was younger, and no one expected her to. But if she wanted anything extra, concert tickets, a new dress for a dance, guess who got nudged? She really wants to see that movie. She doesn't have her own money yet. You do. They still covered her essentials, but anything beyond that, anything that constituted a want instead of a need, quietly became my problem. When I left for college, things calmed down. I was busy, perpetually broke, and 2 states away. My sister was still in high school, and for a while, it felt like I'd bought myself some space, some breathing room. Then I graduated, landed a junior developer job. It was entry-level pay, basic benefits, barely enough to cover rent on a tiny apartment and the crushing weight of student loan payments. But to my parents, it was a windfall. My salary was no longer my own. It was a family resource. The request started slow, insidious. Could you help with her enrollment deposit? Books are so expensive these days. She's just really stressed. She had just started college, studying something vaguely finance-related, an irony that was not lost on me. She didn't work, didn't budget, and never asked me directly. That was always the pattern. She'd ask them, and they'd ask me, positioning themselves as the concerned, neutral arbiters. At first, I said yes, because I thought now that I was earning a real salary, helping would feel lighter, more generous. It didn't. It felt heavier. The more I made, the more they wanted, and not once did it feel like my money was truly mine. Then there was the alcohol. In my early 20s, I learned the hard way that my body simply doesn't handle it. Half a drink and the room starts to spin. Once, at a cousin's wedding, I blacked out completely from 2 small sips of celebratory wine. It was terrifying. Since then, nothing. Not even a toast of champagne. My family knew, but they never really accepted it. They saw it as a personal failing, a quirk I should just get over. You can have a little. Don't be so uptight. It's not like you're allergic. I'd say no. And they'd roll their eyes, another mark in the column of how I was the difficult, rigid one. It wasn't about the drink. It was about how little my reality registered when it conflicted with what they wanted. A couple of years into my job, I got promoted to mid-level. Not a huge jump, but a real step up, a validation of late nights and hard work. I was proud. I called my parents to share the good news. My mom's immediate response was, "That's great, honey. So, how much are you making now?" It was followed, almost in the same breath, by, "Do you think you could help your sister with her study abroad semester? She's so excited. No real congratulations, just the usual. Ask, expect, repeat." So, I stopped saying yes. I didn't make a big speech about boundaries or self-respect. I just stopped. No more just this once. No more treating my savings account like a group project. Maybe I'd still cover a coffee if we were out, but I was no longer her sponsor. Her safety net was gone. Then came the silence. No calls, no texts, just the eerie, punishing quiet of a family sulking at full volume. A few weeks later, the silence broke with a crisis. "Your sister needs help. It's serious." The number was staggering, $12,000. They wouldn't say what for, just that she needed it, that I could afford it, that I was her sister. The old guilt trip, polished to a high shine. I said no. They kept pushing, their voices laced with a frantic edge I hadn't heard before. So, I bypassed them and called her directly. That's when I got the unvarnished, ugly truth. She'd been gambling online. She'd lost big. She owed money to people you don't want to owe money to. She worked in finance now, an entry-level position at a small firm. And if anyone found out, her nascent career was over. "It's not just this job," she'd cried over the phone. "No one hires someone with a gambling record in finance. If this gets out, I'm done for good." I asked if this had happened before. Her silence was the only answer I needed. I told her, "Number not later, not less. The answer is no." "I've helped you my entire life," I said, my voice cold and steady. "But I'm not covering this. Not this time. Not ever." She said I was cold, heartless, that I didn't understand. Maybe I didn't. Or maybe, for the first time, I finally didn't want to. They cut me off completely after that. 3 weeks of absolute nothing. Then, the slow, calculated return. A forwarded joke from my dad. A photo of the backyard from my mom. A TikTok from my sister with no comment. And finally, the invitation. "We're having dinner. Just us. Hope you can come." No mention of the debt, no apologies, no acknowledgement of the conflict, just dinner. I told myself they'd accepted it, that they finally understood where my line was. And when they invited me to dinner, a part of me, the part that still yearned for a family I never had, said yes. Back in the bathroom, Mark's voice echoed in my head, flat, quiet, but with an undercurrent of something clenched and terrified. "It's the juice," he'd said. "I think they spiked it. Alcohol, maybe something else. I don't know for sure, but I know they're counting on you passing out." The room around me was completely still. White tile, the soft hum of the ventilation fan, the distant, muffled clinking of forks on plates downstairs. I didn't say anything. Why? I had finally managed to ask him. Another pause. They want to unlock your phone? He whispered. Use your fingerprint while you're asleep. They think you'll be out cold, that they can send the money from your account and you won't even remember doing it. How? How do you know this? I heard them, he confessed. And there was something in his voice then, a note of shame and fear, like he couldn't believe he was saying the words out loud. I wasn't supposed to. I was dropping off some of her stuff. I ended the call. Not because I believed him entirely. Not yet, but because I needed both hands. And I needed to think. I didn't go back to the table right away. I stood at the bathroom sink and stared at my reflection. The face looking back didn't feel like it belonged to me. Not really. Too pale, too calm on the surface. I told myself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I checked my phone. Then I looked at the heavy bathroom door, thought about walking out of it, down the stairs, and straight out the front door, just leaving. But I didn't. I'm not wired that way. My entire life I had been absorbing their quiet aggressions. Tonight, if they were going to do it, I wanted to see them do it. I wanted to watch them try. Everything looked exactly the same when I came back downstairs. Chicken, forks, soft, waiting smiles. I walked back into the scene like I hadn't just learned something that had irrevocably changed everything. I went back to the table. I smiled. I picked up my fork. I did one more thing before I left the bathroom, a small, critical adjustment, but I'll come back to that later. My mom looked up, her expression a mask of concern. Everything okay, honey? Fine, I said, forcing a smile. Headache's gone. Her own smile held for a fraction of a second too long. My dad's glance lingered. My sister, predictably, didn't look up at all. They tried again with the drink. You haven't touched this, my mom said, nudging the glass of cranberry juice toward me with her manicured finger. It's going to get warm. It's your favorite, my dad added, his voice a low, encouraging rumble. I didn't answer, I just looked at it. The juice was bright red, sweet-looking, devastatingly innocent. For a fleeting second, I wondered if they were bluffing, if Mark had misunderstood, if this was just the old pattern repeating itself. Pressure, guilt, some roundabout emotional play to get me to open my wallet, but then I looked at their faces, my mom's too calm expression. The way my sister's fingers stayed poised just above her phone screen, as if she were waiting for a cue. I picked up the glass, my hand steady. I tipped it toward me, gave them a small, conspiratorial smile. Tastes like I remember, I said, and brought the rim to my lips, letting the cold glass touch my skin, but taking absolutely nothing in. Later, as they were clearing the plates, I created a diversion. Is that someone pulling into the driveway? They all turned at once, a symphony of synchronized curiosity. In that split second, I slid the glass under the table, tilted it just enough, and let a significant portion of the juice spill silently onto the thick, dark patterned carpet. Not all of it, just enough to make the remaining amount in the glass believable. It soaked in fast. No splash, no sound, just a dark stain no one would see until much later. I wiped the rim of the glass with my napkin, set it down again on its coaster, and sat up straight. Then, I started acting. I didn't go full soap opera, just enough. I let my blinks become slower, my limbs feel heavier. My voice grew quieter, a little slurred at the edges. I pressed a hand to my forehead, rubbing my temples. Yeah, I don't know. Just feel weird. Really tired all of a sudden. My mom leaned in, her eyes wide with what looked like pure softness and concern. We were playing a new game now, and she was a master at it. You okay, sweetie? Yeah, I mumbled, letting my head loll slightly. Just a bit, woozy. I think I need to lie down for a minute. No one hesitated. It was almost comical how quickly they sprang into action. They helped me to the living room couch like I was precious, fragile cargo, like they were selfless caretakers, not thieves waiting for their victim to succumb. I lay down, closed my eyes, and focused on one thing. Not to flinch, to breathe even, slow breaths, to make my body limp. The couch cushion was warm under my shoulder. Someone, my mother, draped a soft woolen blanket over my legs. Then, the waiting began, and then I heard it. Is she asleep? My mom whispered, her voice stripped of its earlier sweetness. Yeah, she's out, my sister confirmed, a clinical finality in her tone. Okay, my dad replied, his voice low and businesslike. Let's do this quickly. I heard the soft thud of my phone being picked up from the end table where I'd left it. Then something worse, more violating. The gentle, purposeful touch of fingers curling around my right hand. My thumb being lifted carefully, but with firm intent. My skin, my own flesh and blood, pressed against the cool glass of the sensor. A pause, then a faint vibration from the phone. Unlocked. There was something quietly, profoundly horrific about it. The casual coordination, the practiced efficiency, the fact that they didn't hesitate, not for a moment. They just did it. Okay, my sister whispered, a hint of triumph in her voice. We're in. More tapping, the soft, quick clicks of a virtual keyboard, the sound of numbers being entered. Routing number, my dad said under his breath. She has everything saved, so convenient. How much are we doing? My mom asked, her voice a low hiss. Not all of it, my dad said, just enough to settle it. 12,000. Settle what? I kept my breathing steady. I kept my eyes closed. She won't even know, my mom said, reassuring herself as much as the others. If it goes through clean, she'll just think she was drunk and transferred it herself. She's done dumber things. I told you, my sister said, her voice smug. She always blacks out after a drink. We just needed her to sleep through it. There it was, out loud, the entire, sordid confession. All three of them, a united front of betrayal. A tap, a pause, then a frustrated sigh from my sister. It's asking for a code, she said, her voice sharp with annoyance. A code? My mom repeated. Two-step verification, my sister muttered. The tech-savvy one in their trio of crime. She must have changed it. My dad cursed under his breath, a soft, irritated sound. Try another app, the other bank. More frantic tapping. Still tapping. A few seconds of tense silence. Same thing, damn it. Everything's locked down with a code. They sat in silence for a moment. The air was thick with their failure. Then my mom, ever the pragmatist, said, just put the phone back, put it back where it was. They did. No apologies whispered into the quiet room, no second-guessing their actions, no flicker of conscience, just the quiet rustle of the phone being placed back on the table. I waited. I gave them space to sit down again, to let their heart rates settle, to reassure themselves that their plan had simply hit a snag, not a brick wall. Then, I opened my eyes. I sat up slowly, blinking like someone waking from a shallow, confusing nap. Sorry, I said, my voice thick with fake sleep. Don't know what that was. Felt like I blacked out for a sec. They looked at me like they didn't know what I was. A ghost? A witness? A daughter? You sure you're okay? My dad asked, his voice strained. Yeah, I said, pushing myself to my feet. I think I just need some fresh air. I'm feeling a bit better now. I picked up my phone from the end table, held it like it was just a phone, like nothing had happened, like it hadn't just been used as a weapon against me. Actually, I think I'm just going to head home. I've got an early start at work tomorrow. They nodded, their relief palpable. No protest, no awkward offer to walk me to the door. Just a soft, automatic chorus of, thanks for coming, get home safe, let us know when you're back. Like we hadn't just crossed a line from which there was no return. At the door, we hugged. It was a bizarre, reflexive ritual. My mom, my dad, my sister, one after another. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Habit, tradition, muscle memory. And as soon as it started, something inside me cracked. My mom's familiar perfume, my dad's rough wool jacket, my sister's hand brushing my arm. Normal things, familiar things, and all of them irrevocably poisoned. I felt it rise in my chest, a great heaving weight of grief I didn't know how to carry. This is the last time, I thought, a silent scream in my mind. This is the last time I'm hugging them. After tonight, we don't come back from this. I almost cried. The tears burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not here. I stepped back, smiled one last time, a brittle, paper-thin smile that felt like it was breaking my own face. Thank you for dinner, I said. They smiled back. I opened the door and I left. I didn't tell them what I knew. I didn't ask what they put in the glass. I didn't say a single, accusatory word. But before I had walked out of that bathroom, before I had returned to the dining room to play my part, I did exactly what they never counted on. I didn't block them from getting into my phone. I made that part easy. I left the fingerprint access right where they expected it to be. What I did change was my bank security. In that quiet bathroom, heart pounding, I had added two-factor authentication to every financial app I owned, not the easy kind that sends a text to your own phone. Real verification, tied to an authenticator app that required a separate, time-sensitive code, a code they could never get with just my thumb. So when they tried to transfer the money, the app would log the attempt, stop the transaction dead in its tracks, and leave a digital trail of breadcrumbs. And then I set up the recording, not with some obvious red light or a blinking dot on the screen. If they'd seen that, the entire charade would have been over. But I know how to run an audio recorder in the background. No notifications, no visible apps, nothing on the lock screen to give it away. That's the part they didn't get. I work in tech. I build secure systems for a living. I design software for people who try to outsmart other people. And I knew exactly what a trio of desperate, technologically clumsy amateurs would overlook. While they were unlocking my phone and trying to steal from me, my phone was betraying them right back, recording their every word, every attempt, every damning confession. They thought I was unconscious. But the truth is, I was ahead of them before I even came back to the table. I drove to the police station like I was going to the grocery store. Not fast, not shaking, just a steady, focused calm. I parked, walked in under the harsh fluorescent lights, and stood in line behind a guy arguing about parking tickets. And then it was my turn. I told the woman behind the thick plexiglass that I needed to report a crime. She asked what kind, her expression bored. They drugged me, I said, my voice clear and even, and tried to steal from me. I have the recording. She blinked. Her boredom vanished. Do you know who did it? Yes, I said, my parents and my sister. That's when she stopped blinking. They gave me a chair in a quiet, sterile room with an officer who didn't ask why I hadn't gone to the hospital first or why I wasn't crying. He just listened. I played the audio from my phone. He listened all the way through, his expression growing more grim with every passing second. Do you know what they were trying to do? He asked when it was over. Yeah, I said. They wanted my money. I forwarded him the audio file, showed him the timestamps, and walked him through the bank app logs showing the failed login and transfer attempts. He nodded a lot, took meticulous notes, and typed slowly into a system that looked 10 years older than it should have been. This is serious, he said, looking at me with a new kind of respect. He paused. And the substance? Based on the plan you've described, it's likely a potent sedative, something used in targeted robberies. If they'd misjudged the dose, even slightly, this could have been a very different kind of report. For the first time all night, a genuine chill, cold and sharp, ran down my spine. The line they had crossed was even darker than I had imagined. He asked if I was okay, if I had a safe place to go, if I needed support. I told him I'd already left. It was the first time I'd ever filed a police report, but I didn't feel scared. Not anymore. I felt clean. 2 days later, my phone, a new phone with a new number, buzzed. Word had gotten out. 3 messages forwarded from a cousin and a voicemail she had saved, all before lunch. The first message was from my mom. Did you seriously report your own family? Followed by, what is wrong with you? I didn't answer. My sister had left a voicemail, her voice tight and small, laced with disbelief. It was just a mistake. You made it so much worse than it had to be. My dad called my cousin next, his voice a low growl of fury. She played me the voicemail. You think the police will fix this? You'll ruin everything. You don't do this to your own. I texted my cousin back with a single message to pass along. You drugged me. You tried to steal from me. That's not family. That's a crime. Then I blocked them. All of them. Mom, dad, my sister, group chats, contacts, emergency bypasses. I changed my number for good, updated my will, and froze my credit just in case. I thought cutting them off completely would hurt more, that it would feel like an amputation. It didn't. It felt like breathing again after being held underwater for a very, very long time. They didn't fight the charges. They couldn't. Not with the recording. Not with the failed transactions lined up perfectly with the time-stamped audio. Not after the detective said, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." Attempted fraud, biometric misuse, conspiracy to commit a crime, administering a substance without consent. All three of them, tangled in the same net they had woven for me. The recording said everything I didn't have to. They got probation, 1 year, plus heavy fines, mandatory community service, and a strictly enforced no-contact order. No jail time. But it stuck. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask what happened next. But word gets around in a family, even a fractured one. My cousin on my dad's side mentioned they'd sold the house. Something about the debt, the court costs, scraping together what little was left of their lives. No one in the extended family was surprised, just quiet and distant. As for my sister, I ran into her once, months later, at a grocery store across town. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and just kept her face turned toward an end cap of paper towels like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. She was wearing a polo shirt and a name tag vest, restocking shelves. Finance was a bad fit, I guess. I didn't say anything. I just paid for my pasta and left. Her boyfriend, Mark, was long gone. I heard that from a mutual friend. Not close, just someone who still follows everyone on social media. Apparently, he moved out a few weeks after the whole thing went public. Didn't make a scene, just packed his bags and left. Some things don't need explanations. They explain themselves. And me? I don't get messages asking for help anymore. No family group chats filled with passive-aggressive guilt disguised as obligation. I work. I sleep. I open my fridge and know that everything inside it was bought for me, by me. The silence in my apartment isn't lonely, it's peaceful. I thought cutting them off would feel brutal. It just felt clean. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? This story illuminates a painful but vital human truth. Family is not an unconditional contract, and love is not synonymous with obligation. We are taught that blood is the strongest bond, an unbreakable tie that demands loyalty above all else. But this narrative reveals the dark side of that belief, where family becomes a justification for exploitation, and love is a currency used to manipulate and control. The most profound lesson here is the distinction between a nurturing relationship and a parasitic one. True love is rooted in respect, support, and the celebration of an individual's autonomy. It does not demand self-sacrifice to feed another's irresponsibility. The narrator's journey is one of radical self-preservation. Her actions were not a betrayal of family, but an affirmation of her own worth. Setting a boundary, especially one so final, is often seen as an act of cruelty, but in reality, it is an act of courage. It is the moment a person decides that their own peace, safety, and sanity are not negotiable. The ultimate lesson is that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you the most, especially when you realize their version of love is poison. True freedom isn't just about escaping a physical threat. It's about reclaiming your life from the emotional and financial chains that have held you captive.